up with like these toxic cycles where landlords are maybe not being the most rational and working with their tenants. Where you have like people who go into these places thinking they could afford it, and then suddenly like they're really fucked over, and then the landlords don't even want to put money back into the property because they think like, oh, like is it even worth it? I'm barely getting paid enough. And this, I'm not saying I have any
So
solutions here. I'm just trying to explain at
okay,
least what
so
happens to the
are we
products.
talking like insofar as what predatory means is that the contracts these people sign in regards to the leases are maybe complex and there's hidden components to them, or maybe not even hidden components, but stuff that like laymen and laypersons wouldn't necessarily recognize. Is the idea that they're predatory because it's being hidden inside these complex lease agreements, or like what are we talking about here? Because I could buy that a little bit, and I could say, okay, well then maybe we should reform these lease agreements and maybe the language that we use in them and stuff like that. I do think the major thing is probably location, right? So you have problems where people like you, the job they have is the best job that they can get in an area, and then they have to be able to get to that job, and then the radius in which they can find an affordable uh, place to live. It's and I know they don't have a right to live wherever they want necessarily, and they're not just gifted a specific job or anything. But not everybody has the ability to move to where they would have better opportunities, and I think that's important to realize.
What I would agree. I think that there's in a more perfect capitalistic society, the McDonald's in downtown San Francisco would be paying $40 an hour, right? Because that's what it would take to get someone to work there because the housing was
Right, but they don't
expensive.
have to because they're a corporation that.
Well, no, no, it's nothing about that. They don't have to do it because you can offer $10 an hour to work at McDonald's in downtown San Francisco when someone's going to take the job. It's a failure of it, even though the costs are up. So we will get to that point, but I don't think that we're there yet, and it's a failure until then. And there needs to be, I would say, government oversight to make sure that you don't have to. If you're a fireman or a policeman in San Francisco, you shouldn't ideally have to live in Oakland. That seems backwards to a certain extent, but I don't know the effective way to solve that issue. I know that rent control is not it, and it's most likely government oversight.
What do you? How do you feel about subsidy instead of rent control then?
I think that's great. So
Subsidies
here's
are good because subsidies are targeted. A fucking men.
yeah,
Like you apply for a subsidy, you make a certain amount of money or whatever, and you want to live in a certain area, then absolutely that subsidy can target you. Yeah, sure.
it also takes it off of the individual landlord, right? What is rent control fundamentally? It's putting a social responsibility on an individual taxpayer specifically. If you own a building, guess what? You're now responsible for this person who lives in there, and they have to stay at this rent. People who are low income should be able to live in the city, but those vouchers should